You've probably heard that you should adjust your training as you get older. And this advice usually goes as far as do more strength training. But there's a bit more to it than that. So today we're giving you some tips and advice on how to adjust your training as you hit your 40s, your 50s, and your 60s. And you should watch this because it'll be you sooner than you think. Let's start with those people who are just starting on an endurance journey later in life. If you're a bit older and you're taking up swimming, cycling, or running for the first time, here are a few things you need to think about. Firstly, the risk factors. If you have any of these, you do need to pay extra special attention or even go to a doctor and get them checked out. Blood pressure, heart disease in the family, smoking previously in the family, or high cholesterol are all risk factors that you need to be aware of and possibly get checked out before you start exercising. But the benefits of exercise far outweigh the risks, so you can still push on and get really fit doing endurance exercises. You should also, if you're just starting out endurance training, start slowly and build slowly. This actually applies to anyone starting out endurance training, but it's particularly important if you're older. Don't rush into it. You can get excited and enthusiastic and over-enthusiastic and rush into it and then get injured. Speaking of injury, treat niggles early. Any kind of little pain or niggle, act like it's serious until you've had it checked out and you know that it's not serious and you can run through it. Don't do it the other way around and run through it and then find that it's turned into something serious and you can't run for 6 to 8 weeks. And finally, get some specialist advice. Ask a coach, ask someone who's experienced, so you make sure you don't make silly mistakes at the beginning that might derail your progress and take some of the enjoyment out of your endurance journey. Now, what if you are not new to endurance sport and starting your endurance journey, but you're new to being old? Perhaps you've just crested the hill at 40 and you're worried about how to adjust your training as you get older. Well, there are a few things to think about. First, consistency is key. And this is true for everyone. You need to train consistently, but as you get older, it becomes more and more important. You can't afford to skip a couple weeks here and there because it takes that much longer to get it back. So you have to be consistent. You also can't take a month off and then just jump straight back into training like you could in your 20s. And then there's strength training. We did mention this already, and it's kind of the thing you hear about most when you hear about older athletes training. And there is a reason for that. As you get older, your muscles tend to waste away if you don't use them. You do need to work a little bit harder to keep that muscle mass. You can't stop losing muscle mass as you get older, but you can definitely slow the wasting of those muscles. Another thing that gradually decreases as you get older, and there's not much you can do about it, is your VO2 max, or your aerobic capacity. Unfortunately, everyone's aerobic capacity will decrease as you get older. And much like strength training, it is something that you need to fight against, you need to try and prevent. And the way you do this is by doing high intensity sessions that push up that VO2 max to make sure that it doesn't slowly slide down as you get older. As you get older, your metabolism will also slow down. This gets more and more important as you get older, but it starts in your 40s already. So if you are just in your 40s, be aware that you're going to have to watch what you eat a little bit more and make sure that you're not overeating for your now slightly slower metabolism. Of course, you do have to feed your training though, so if you are doing lots of training, make sure you're eating sufficiently. And then of course, you will recover slower. And this can be a hard pill to swallow when you realize that you're still feeling that hard session 3 days later when you never used to. It really does make you feel old, but it is unfortunately the reality. And you can still push hard in those sessions and do the hard sessions, but you may need to add an extra day or so of recovery after those because unfortunately you will feel it. And the same is true, unfortunately, for races. It'll take you that much longer to recover from a hard race. You can and you should still push your limits in those races, and man, it does feel good to stick it to the young guns occasionally. Unfortunately though, it can take significantly longer to recover from those hard effort races. And this is where it gets tricky when it comes to consistency, because if you do those hard races, the temptation is to take a week, 10 days, 2 weeks really off to recover, and then you lose that fitness, and then it takes twice as long to get that fitness back because you're now a bit older, and so you lose all the consistency. So the trick is to only race when you're ready to race, and then get back into training as soon as possible after that race. I'm not saying take no recovery, but try to get moving again as soon as possible so you can keep that consistency and not lose it because you did a hard race. And finally, for those people who are just in their 40s and trying to figure it out, you still need to do the high intensity sessions. And this is a trap that a lot of aging athletes fall into. High intensity efforts feel a lot worse, you do them significantly slower, and it takes you that much longer to recover from, so you just end up not doing them at all, and all your running kind of becomes the same steady pace. This is a trap, this is a mistake, and you do need to do those high intensity efforts. You just need to build in a little bit more recovery after them and make sure that when you do them, you are fresh and ready for them. But you should still do high intensity efforts. And then what if you're a little bit further down the road, say in your 50s? Well, the first advice is the same as the last one. Keep up the intensity. It's going to get even harder, it's going to feel even worse, and your intensity is going to feel even slower, but you should still do it. Take more recovery days afterwards, make sure that the high intensity is still high intensity, but have longer recovery intervals between it, but definitely keep those high intensity sessions in your program. They're very important. And then you might want to think about adjusting your equipment as you age. As you age, you will lose some strength and flexibility, and you can use your equipment to kind of compensate for this. So you might want to use some more forgiving shoes, particularly for your long runs, or maybe shoes with more structural support, so you don't need to use so much leg strength to hold your position. Or even adjusting your bike position into a less aggressive position, so that you don't have to use your lower back so much and rely on that to keep that position. Just adjust it to forgive your slightly less strong older body. As we said earlier, your metabolism will slow as you get older, and this is going to get even worse when you get into your 50s. And now you don't need to just adjust the quantity of food you're eating, but possibly also the composition of that food, slowly shifting to more proteins and less carbs in each meal to maintain your body weight and adjust for the fact that your basal metabolic rate, your daily calorie use, is significantly lower than it used to be. We've already mentioned how important strength training is as you get older, and this gets even more important as you get into your 50s. Whereas a younger endurance athlete wants to do strength training but being careful not to add muscle mass, an older endurance athlete in your 50s and beyond actually wants to train as if you're trying to build muscle with those high intensity, minimal reps at high weight. Because you won't actually put on muscle mass, but you will prevent the loss of that muscle mass by doing a more structured, rigid strength training program. Don't worry about putting on mass, that's unlikely to happen, but you do want to make those strength gains as you get older. And finally, for those 50s, keep racing. Studies have shown that athletes that keep racing as they get older actually lose their VO2 slower than those that don't keep racing. So you should definitely set those aggressive goals and go after them. Do those races. It does make a difference. So what about your 60s? Is it all over now? Time to hang up that endurance kit? Definitely not. Unfortunately, your aerobic capacity, your VO2 max, will drop further, and there's not much you can do about it. Training will slow that drop, but it will still drop and it will affect your endurance performance. Unfortunately, you will get slower, but that's not a reason to stop doing endurance sports. As you age, you will lose muscle mass, and you'll also lose tendon and ligament elasticity. And this will mean that weight-bearing exercises will place more impact on your body. So you might want to shift more towards the biking and swimming side of triathlon than the running side. That's not to say you shouldn't run. In fact, you definitely should, because weight-bearing exercises helps to slow the degradation of your bones and ligaments and tendons. But you may want to do more of your aerobic training, swimming and biking, to keep that aerobic engine firing on all cylinders without adding too much impact to those now less strong ligaments and bones. With that decrease in elasticity comes increased stiffness. Again, this is not something you should give into, this is something you should rally against. And this might mean a more structured mobility and flexibility program. If you haven't started one already, it might be time to look at a yoga or Pilates class once or twice a week, or at least do it on your own at home, but make sure you're doing that flexibility work. Because if you increase your range of motion or keep your range of motion good, that'll definitely help your swimming and your biking and your running. And again, Keep up the strength work to fight that muscle loss. You can keep fighting it. Finally, get your heart checked regularly. This is important for all ages over 40, but particularly once you're over 60. You should definitely get your heart checked and screened fairly regularly, and then react immediately to any warning signs. These include changes in your heart rate for the same effort level, or breathlessness, chest pain, or irregular heartbeats. These are warning signs, and you should react immediately to go and get your heart checked out and make sure it's nothing serious. It might be nothing, but it might be serious. You can also visit screenmyheart.co.uk for more information on this, or find a local heart screening place near you and get your heart screened before you do any strenuous endurance exercise once you're over 60. I hope our tips today have helped you. If you have your own tips, leave them in the comment section down below to help us and other listeners.